Most people have never left their home country, their hometown, city, county, or even zip code. There's a lot of people who grew up, who lived on the same block that they were born on or grew up on, I meant to say. Some may say that could be a sign of stability. Your parents own the house, so you just, you moved in or you stayed in the house that they own. You acquired the house after they've either passed on or moved somewhere else. So the house is paid off. That's the good sense of it. That's the not the extreme side of it, but that's the optimistic view on it. Generational equity, so to speak, or real estate, I guess. Staying in the house that you were born in, and there's either no mortgage to a low mortgage, so that makes sense long term, I guess. But kind of outside of those factors, right? And I get the stability of being on one job, but a lot of that's changed. I could see that happening, 30 plus years ago, maybe 20 plus years, right before maybe the 08, 09 type of scare, or not scare, but it actually happened. The economic housing bust, I can see that happening. But in today's time, especially with, right around pre-COVID and obviously post-COVID, of course, things change. So, staying somewhere isn't always great. Staying somewhere very long term, long term and then very long term. They may differ, but staying somewhere isn't always great. There could be a lot of toxicity staying somewhere for too long. There could be a lot of plateau happening with financial development, with character development, with relationships. If you don't move to gain a different perspective, move to help you get away from a certain crowd of people that you don't need in your life. A lot of what comes with change is physically moving yourself. Physically moving yourself from what was, a permanent situation. But people, for whatever reason, or every excuse is more negative, but that's what it seems like sometimes. For whatever reason, people will stay in the situation, right? People will not move, even if they have the income, even if they have the necessary needs to do that. The necessary means, to do that. People fear change. People fear developing a new circle or even isolating themselves for at least a temporary amount of time. People don't like to do that. People may weigh out situations. Well, I have to go to work and I have 2, 3, 4, 8 kids. So I need help. There's daycare nearby. Sarika. There's daycare nearby. It's decent cost. The government's helping me pay for it. Or I have my grandmother or my aunt, right, who's around the corner. So I can't pick up and pivot anytime soon. People have friends. People have vices that's in proximity to where they live. People got groups, more organized, convenes like church/religion, and maybe sport active groups. So it's hard to pick up and go from that. But when you look at the bigger picture, right, a body in motion stays in motion, and that could be on a broader scale. That doesn't just have to mean with being active, like walking, running, jogging, swimming, jump roping, And I'm not saying you have to move somewhere every 6 to 12 months or every 4 to 5 years. But I really believe changing your environment once in a while, especially if there's hindrances in the progression of your life, is good for the mind and body. There's no straight out statistic. This is just energy. This is just what I see, and probably you guys who are watching this seen from your life or other people. I've seen this with my life, and I've seen this with other people. I feel like you guys could resonate with that, right? Moving can be a simple remedy. Simply moving from indirect, pressures in life. You can make more money moving, or save more money moving. You can lose weight moving because you're in a better environment, or a more variable environment where there's more options to stay active. You could meet people, right, where you want to take a relationship to the next level. You're tired of being in a platonic relationship. Well, the environment that you're currently in produces, right, or condones, either platonic relationships because you can't seem to meet someone on the same accord, or extreme cases, right? Situationships, or friends with benefits. Like, you stay in certain levels with your life because of the environment that you're around. I always tell myself every day, even to myself, there's 8 billion plus people in this world. There is 200 plus territories / countries in this world. The world is almost indefinite to our means. Unless you're like 1% of the 1%, then you could just have access to just most of the world, right? If you want. But the world is indefinite to most people. So people be scratching their heads. They've been in one spot or 3 spots, only 4 spots. That's generally the same in the same region, proximity, right, of the people that they hang around, and they scratch their heads why they can't get something off the ground, whether it's a business or relationship. And it's like, well, dude, maybe, or female, maybe change where you live. Change when you try to do business or meet people. Even if you're not changing where you live, change where you convene. People go to the same bars, to the same clubs, to the same libraries. Like, people do the same thing. We're routine based. And again, as I said a little earlier in the beginning, although that could promote a sense or talk on the sense of stability and routine, right? It could become monotonous. It could become mundane. A mind in motion stays in motion. And you don't have to go into the rabbit hole. Again, you don't have to take this extreme sense of, being nomadic or cut off or ostracized. We don't want to get into those levels, right? So, it's always a balance. It's always a balance. But talk to people and look at people's life. Compare people who's moved a few times, right? See where they're at in life. See what their mental fortitude is, right? It's not always about finances, but just see how a person is doing when they move. See what they talk about. See what their vocabulary looks like, right? See how they, deal with, certain economical or social, situations compared to people who don't move. You don't know till you know, man.